Pain. We've all felt it. It's this universal human experience, right? It's our body's alarm system. Sometimes it's just a little annoying, other times it can completely take over our lives. But have you ever really stopped to think about what pain is? It's not just a feeling in your stub toe or your aching back. Nope. It's actually a super complex story that starts with a tiny electrical signal and ends with a sensation that is completely created and interpreted by your brain. So how does that all work? Let's trace that journey from the first ouch all the way up to the brain's command center. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with the body's alarm system itself. Then, we'll follow the signal as it travels from sensation to perception. After that, we'll see how the brain decodes all that discomfort. We'll also look at what happens when those alarms just don't stop ringing. And finally, we'll touch on how we can manage that pain signal.
All right, let's dive right in at the very beginning. We're talking microscopic level here, where that initial pain signal first gets generated.
So let's ask the big question right up front. What is pain, really? It seems like it should have a simple answer, but trust me, it's way more complicated than you might think. It's so much more than just a physical thing. You know, the official clinical definition really nails it. Let's look at those keywords: an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. That right there tells you everything. Pain isn't just a physical warning light on your dashboard, it's also an emotional event. And that's a huge reason why it can be so powerful and distressing. So how does that alarm actually get triggered? Well, it all starts with these amazing first responders called nociceptors. Think of them as millions of tiny detectors scattered all over your body. And you've got different kinds. You have these super fast A delta fibers that give you that instant sharp ow when you touch something hot. And then you have the slower C fibers, and they're responsible for that dull, throbbing ache that comes later. They're all designed to detect different kinds of trouble, like heat, crazy amounts of pressure, or chemical irritants. Okay, so the nociceptors have spotted a problem and they've fired off a signal. The alarm has been sounded. But that's just the very first step. Now we've got to follow that electrical message as it zips on its journey toward this central command center, the brain. But here's where it gets interesting. The story isn't just a one-and-done signal. After an injury, the area gets inflamed. Your body releases this flood of chemicals, creating what some scientists call an inflammatory soup. And this whole process makes the nociceptors in that area even more sensitive. It's literally like turning up the volume on the alarm system. It's exactly why even a light touch on a bad sunburn can be incredibly painful. All those little alarms are on high alert. So from the injury site, that electrical impulse shoots along these nerve fibers all the way to your spinal cord. From there, it gets relayed straight up to the brain. And you guys, this is the most important part. You don't actually feel the pain in your hand or your foot. That's just where the signal starts. The entire experience of pain, what it feels like, how bad it is constructed, interpreted, and perceived right here, inside your brain. So the message has arrived at headquarters, but the brain's job is way more than just reading a text message. It has to be a detective. It has to figure out, okay, what does this signal actually mean? Let's use a really common and super important example: chest discomfort. When someone gets chest pain, what's the first thing we all think of? Heart attack, right? And sure, as you can see here, heart-related issues are a big cause, about 31% of the time. But look at this. Gastrointestinal problems like heartburn are actually more common at 42%, and issues with the chest wall itself, like a pulled muscle, make up another 28%. So the same basic signal, hey, something's wrong in the chest, can come from completely different sources. So how in the world does a doctor or your brain tell the difference? Well, they look for clues. The details matter. Is the pain a squeezing feeling or more of a burning? Did it start while you were jogging or right after you ate a giant burrito? Does it radiate out to your jaw, or is it just sitting in the middle of your chest? Every single one of these details is a piece of the puzzle that helps the brain interpret that signal correctly. And get this, the brain isn't just passively listening to these signals. It has its own volume knob. It has these pathways that run from the brain down the spinal cord that can actually dial down or even block incoming pain signals. This is called pain modulation. It explains incredible things, like how an athlete can finish a game with a broken bone and not feel it until later, or how placebo, a sugar pill, can give someone real, measurable pain relief. Your brain literally decides how much of that pain signal it wants to hear. This whole system is absolutely amazing when it's working the way it's supposed to. But what happens when the wiring gets messed up, or when that alarm bell just refuses to turn off, long after the danger is gone? This brings us to something called neuropathic pain. In this case, the pain isn't coming from an injury out in the body anymore.
It's coming from a problem in the nervous system itself. The alarm system has become the source of the problem. Think about the awful lingering pain that can come from shingles or diabetic neuropathy. It's like a warning signal with no actual warning, a real ghost in the machine.
And when pain becomes chronic, it's a whole different animal. It's no longer just a symptom of something else, it can become a disease in its own right. The alarm just keeps ringing and ringing, and over time, that can actually rewire the brain and the nervous system. It's persistent, it's emotionally draining, and you can't treat it like a simple, fresh injury. It demands a much more complex approach.
Okay, so if the alarm is too loud or it's stuck in the on position, how do we step in? How can we help turn down that volume and give people some relief?
Well, two of the most common tools we have are NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, and opioids, like morphine. And they work in completely different places. An NSAID works primarily out at the site of the injury. It tackles that inflammatory soup we talked about, making those first responder nociceptors less sensitive. Opioids, on the other hand, they work centrally. They go straight to the command center, the brain and spinal cord, and they basically tell it to change its interpretation and perception of the pain signal that's coming in.
And the toolbox is actually much bigger than just that. For example, and this is pretty fascinating, some drugs that were first developed as antidepressants are now some of our best tools for chronic pain. And why is that? Because they work on those pain modulation pathways, that volume knob we were talking about. They help the brain get better at turning down its own pain signals.
But here's the most important takeaway. Modern pain management is about so much more than just writing a prescription. It has to start with a really thorough evaluation to understand the whole person, not just the pain score. Then it's about setting functional goals. Maybe the goal isn't to get pain to a 0, but to be able to walk the dog again or play with your grandkids. And it almost always needs a team approach, combining meds with things like physical therapy and psychological support to treat both the physical signal and the emotional experience of pain. And that leaves us with a really mind-bending final thought. We've seen that the brain isn't just a passive receiver of pain signals. It's the ultimate creator, interpreter, and controller of the entire experience. So if the mind has that much power, enough power to create real physical relief from a sugar pill, what kind of new doors could that open for treating and managing pain in the future? It's definitely something to think about.